This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Robert Sciglimpaglia. How you doing tonight? Welcome to the
Very
Pam
good.
Electric Ghost podcast. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you for having me.
And one of the questions we ask before we get to the heart of your story, we ask a couple questions. One of the questions we always ask is, like, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I love it. That's the bottom line. I've searched for my earlier younger days to try to find stuff that I had a passion for and that I love to do. So I have no problem getting up in the morning. I love all the things that I do. I'm an attorney. I'm an actor. I'm a producer. One thing kind of led to the other. So, and I think the heart of it is I'm a people person. I like to help people and I like to do something that I think is meaningful. So that's what motivates me.
So, as an attorney, did you kind of find a way to seg into being an actor and a voiceover artist and producer? Did that being an attorney somehow open an opportunity for these other things, or those were just things you were doing on as like side gigs?
It did. So when I started practicing law 34 years ago, can't believe it. Uh, I represented some musical acts. So that got me into the entertainment world. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so then about 10 years after that, I decided I wanted to just take some adult ed classes in voiceover. And, I just wanted to check it out, see what it was like. I really, I wasn't planning on pursuing it necessarily, but I loved it. So then I did pursue it, and I cut a demo and, started to do gigs. And then that led me into acting. And, once I got into the acting world and the voiceover world, one of my colleagues, actors and voiceover artists, knew that I was an attorney. So they started asking me legal questions. That led to a book that I wrote called Voiceover Legal, which hit number one on the Amazon best-selling list. And that opened up a lot of doors. So that led to me representing filmmakers, and that's how I became a producer, because people would ask me to represent them for legal issues in films and TV shows. And then sometimes they would just ask me to help them produce it. So when they started doing that, I started my own production company about 10 years ago or so, and I started producing my own work. So that's kind of how one thing led to the other thing, and they're all intertwined. They all kind of led to each other, and it's like it's like a big spider web. It's all interweaved.
So it's like that role as dad in the 2012 Chevy Super Bowl commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that one of the first things that you did, or is that the like more notable things?
That was in about the middle of my journey in acting, 2012. It's definitely one of the highest profile, most notable things that I've done. Mm-hmm. But I got that, just because of the people that I met. So I had done an off-Broadway play, and the woman who plays my wife in that commercial was the one that recommended me to the director, and that's how that happened. I didn't even know.
Once you get that Rolodex going, like you get these opportunities.
Exactly. Didn't even audition for it. I just sent in my demo, and the director's like, "Yeah, come on, you'll be perfect." So that's how it's amazing how, like, when you meet people, you never know where it's going to lead. So
you were on that PBS American Experience Hijacked. Is that
yes.
like the first thing? Is that
that was the first thing I ever did? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So after I did my demo, my voiceover demo, I submitted it on an audition site, and I got selected to do that role. I didn't know what it was until I got the role. Then I found out it was for PBS American Experience. All I knew was it was a documentary. That's all I knew when I had done the audition. And then when I didn't know where it was, I didn't know anything. And then I found out it was in 30 Rock at Broadway Sound. That's where I went to record. So that's where they do Saturday Night Live's post, in 30 Rock, Broadway Sound. And then I ended up doing a couple of foreign voice dubs, like when you watch some of the documentaries, there's somebody that they interview and they speak in a foreign language, and there's somebody that does the English dub over the. That's what I did. A couple of those. So it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. Is a documentary like a lot different than doing a TV commercial?
Oh yeah, it's very, very different. The commercials, that's more acting. The documentary, it's a lot of timing. It's a lot of you're reading a script in the booth. They give you there's like 3 beeps that they go beep, beep, beep. And then you come in and you say your line, and you have to like kind of match it up with the way that the person's speaking, so that you keep it within. You don't want to
sequence it in. Yeah.
Right. You don't want to talk after they're done. You want to kind of get it in.
Kind of like a studio musician trying to replay bass lines on a record.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an overdub thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So when you're on acting doing a commercial, there's there's a lot more. It's a lot more flexibility to play around.
Yeah, you're kind of locked into that. Like if you're locked into a song, like in the film director is like doing the reshoots, and you got to fit it within that timing. It's got to be exactly within this time frame.
Exactly.
To get it. So you can't really go outside of that.
Right. Yeah, you can't. You just have to say what's on the page and get it within the time. You can't. There's no playing around. There's no. You're not experimenting with different characters when you're doing that kind of documentary work.
But then you've gone into film. You've done like 35 film and television projects.
Yes.
It's like a teleplay, like significantly different than like a movie film, like screenplay. Like when you do television, are the teleplays like a totally different thing, or is it in the same wheelhouse?
It's different than the business end. On the creative end, it's very similar. So but the format's a little different. Obviously, films are longer. With episodic, it could be like 10 minutes or 15 minutes with streaming. So they're usually shorter, and usually get geared towards streaming now. So the business model is a little different for it. So when I'm being an attorney for those things, there's differences. But when I'm being an actor, there's really not. So
do you think like the episodic like streaming things that you see on Amazon and Hulu and Netflix, all those, like you got these shows that go on like 10, 15, 16 episodes.
Right.
Is there more opportunity to do more work, or is there less work?
There's a ton of opportunity. For streaming's opened up a whole gamut of work for actors and producers, because you have an outlet to get your stuff distributed, where before you were relying on TV networks, which there's not that many of them, or especially because most of them are owned by a couple of big companies, which I'm not going to mention, but who they are. Yeah. So streamers, the streamers are starting to get bought up too, which is a bad thing, but there's so many different streamers that you can put your material on.
Multiple different
to get seen.
Yeah, because you got so many different networks. And what I find interesting is that you got things that maybe would have been a 2-hour movie now going like 16 hours or 18 hours.
Right. Yeah, you make it an episodic. Sure.
Yeah, making these like mini epics. Like so, you back in the day, it got something like a Shogun or Roots or something. Like that would be like not the name. It wouldn't be typical. It's like not typical for to have that. But now that's the archetype. That's the thing. Is these long episodic things that go like multiple seasons.
The other thing that I've seen that's a trend too is the mini series. So like there's a lot of streamers that want like 2 or 3
small short
episodes,
episodic thing.
So you could take one long film and break it up into 3 episodes
instead of being 3 films over like a big period. You actually could get it all filmed in that, not take 4 years to do it.
Right. Well, you can also just shoot the whole thing in one shot and just split it up. So like that, there's a lot of demand for that, where they want the short 2, 3. Well, not 2. It's usually 3 or more episodes that they just put up because then that's how they get viewers to either buy all 3 of them, or that's how they get repeat viewers for ad revenue. So that's a new trend, relatively new trend. It really is for streamers.
Yeah.
For networks, they do they do short ones, like they do the six episode ones.
Yeah, 6 episode, yeah. But I kind of like, I was like, I love a lot of K-drama, so I watch like Korean or Chinese dramas. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and those go, some of them, like the Chinese dramas can go like 30 episodes, 40 episodes.
And the beauty of it, there's really no rules. So you can get something that's 30 or 40. You can do something that's 3. That's the other beauty of the streaming, is that it doesn't have to be, like in the old days where if it was a 30 minute day, it had to be 22 minutes. Now it could be 18 minutes.
Yeah, like some of these are like 60 minutes. Like there's a lot of the K dramas and Chinese dramas are like hour long, like big cinematic things that go on for like a story, like a Godfather like level story, lasted for a long time. And like I lived in Japan, and I kind of got the flavor for this other Eastern version of media. Mm-hmm. And then what I see now is like there's some like Western things that are kind of cloning some of that. They're starting to bring some of that Eastern style, Japanese style, Chinese, sometimes Taiwanese stuff is crossing, like the themes are crossing into our themes, and we're getting this like an American version of this, what was done over there.
Sure. I mean, that makes total sense, because it's there's the streamers want content. So I mean, that's an perfect opportunity.
Because sometimes we just recycle the same ideas all the time. So if you have a different idea that's not the same, come from the same place, then it's like, oh, well, that gives us a new source of creativity.
So I mean, look at Hallmark Christmas films. I mean, it's really the same story recycled over and over again.
Yeah, we kind of
are the same, the 2 or 3 stories and recycled over and over again.
The same thing over and over. We bring back Ironside. We bring, I'm surprised they haven't brought back Kojak, but they try to bring back everything that's ever been.
Sure.
But you also have done work like in the production side. So you're working on Sweeney Todd on Broadway. Is that something that you're doing now, and that's a new thing?
No, it ran last year.
So that was from last year. Okay.
Yeah, that was Josh Groban, which it was awesome. It was a very successful run. So
what's it like with the production hat
on? So the production hat, kind of, you're using your creativity or your creative side, and you're combining it with your business knowledge, and that's how you get the production side, because you have your hand in a lot of different things. So casting, so you need to be able to figure out who can act and who can't act. Mm-hmm. Right. So sometimes producers that are just on the business side, they don't have that creative side
judgment. They can't make a good judgment about who's actually going to be good cast decisions.
Exactly.
Cast decisions. Exactly. So you need more creative somebody.
Exactly. Or sometimes you'll make a business decision. You want to pick an A-list actor, but that A-list actor doesn't fit that particular role. Yeah. So you're like, oh, I want to get so and so Tom Cruise to play this role, but it's it's not a role that it's good for Tom Cruise, and so those are other things that happen, and being on both sides, it really that's where you get a good production, by having knowledge on both sides, and then also knowing who to hire. Mm-hmm. Like, because you can't do any project, any film, you can't do it yourself.
Yeah, it's a team. Like I've had the directors on before, where it's a team sport. Like
right.
You to get that scene is because you got the script editor, you got the lighting director, photography directors,
exactly.
You get all the special effect guys, you get all this, and everybody's got to be doing like their A game to get that moment.
Exactly. It's the top collaborative moment you're going to have is doing a film or a TV show, and it's kind of like winning the Super Bowl. Like if they're not all the 11 players on the field, or even 22 offensive defense, are not all doing their job, they're not going to win the Super Bowl. It's the same thing when you're doing a film. You need everybody on the team. So it starts with picking the right team members.
Yeah.
And then
it's like this. It is a lot of it the same group that people get comfortable with. Like if you get into production companies, like if this person's like the best lighting, this is the best photography person, this is the best camera people, these are the best special effects. It's like they start to keep that team associated with your production company, or you're
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so there's usually, I mean, if there can be one person, that's great, but it's usually a few people that you would go to, because somebody is not going to be available all the time. So the people do other jobs. So you want to have a team of lighting people, and a team of sound people, and a team of DPs. You want to have a team, not too many, but you want to have a couple, 2 or 3, a few that you can come on when when something comes up.
You always bring these groups of consultants in, or because I'm in software design, and we work with like a lot of third-party groups. Like we do certain things, like these guys do this, these guys do this. We have a list of tasks, and this group of people from Poland really good at this. This group of people from like Germany do this, and this group here this, and so we try to weave them together based on their capability and their availability.
Yeah, and you also want to mesh the personalities too. Like you don't want people that are not going to get along be working together, because then that definitely has an effect on the chemistry, just like any team sport.
Is that like a lesson learned through like production work, of like going through and just like, oh, that's not what you do.
Absolutely.
Note that, and then like you just build that like that lesson learned log.
Absolutely, and it's one of those.
Do this.
One of those. I'm not going to work with this person ever again. Log too. You know what I mean? So, because there are certain people that you really you like to work with, and there are certain people that every once in a while someone comes along that you just don't like to work with. So, why
if that's the main actor?
Yeah, I mean it's true. If it whoever it is, it could be the director of photography, or the director, or the actor, or whoever it is. If you're not, if you don't get along with them, then your chances are you're not going to hire them again. So that's what it's all about. It's about finding your team, the team that you're, when you like somebody and they're good, then you have a much better chance of getting a good product at the end. Versus if somebody's really good, but you're always butting heads, then you may get a good product at the end, but it feels like you went through a 12-round boxing match to get it done.
Sometimes you get that kind of like Lennon McCartney kind of fight, like when they're on it, they're on it. They make some Jagger and Keith Richards.
Exactly.
Like when there were some periods of time where they were on it, like Exile on Main Street. And then when they kind of went off, and like they're fighting each other, it's like, well, they're not on it.
Exactly. Right.
You had to know when to walk away and come back.
Yeah, I'm sure that they needed to take a break from one another.
Yeah, the idea is like, okay, always be there. Sometimes you walk away and come back. But is there like a voiceover project that is the most memorable, or the one that you like really the most proud of, that you could kind of relate?
Well, the American Experience is definitely one of them. I also was the linguistic director for the Samsung BIXBY voice. So BIXBY, it's on the cell phones, and it's on all their appliances.
Yeah.
So I was the one that actually was in the studio for a couple of months directing the talent. So that was another one that I'm pretty proud of that one.
What's it like to do some kind of technology project like that that's like tied to a system, like a voiceover that's not a commercial or like a movie, but it's actually for like a system?
Yeah, that again, much different. So the commercials, quick, you saying your few lines, you say them a bunch of times, they take the best take, done. This is a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you're in there and you're just saying a line after line after line after line. A lot of it gibberish, doesn't mean anything, but it's just lines that the computer needs.
Yeah,
And
just you
then
got to put all that data into the computer. You got to get all the voices in for the language that it's going to be used in the protocol. It's
well, we
kind
did English, so they had other talent that would do the different
of yeah.
languages.
Okay.
But what the Bixby voice, when that came out 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, the reason why it was advanced was because it started the emotion. Like it started, so the actor had to read different emotions.
Yeah, so that's a
Sad,
lot more
happy,
complicated.
so it wasn't just like, like when you used to watch your old Garmin GPS, it just
Yeah,
like
it's
it
kind
was
of
like a
dead
monotone kind of
voice.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, the old dead voice. And this has actually got like life to it.
Exactly. Bixby had different, Bixby had different emotions. So, happy,
It's be a lot
you'd
more work
say something happy. Oh, definitely, definitely. So you'd have to say, they'd give you the lines and you'd have to read them happy, sad, you'd have to read them different ways. You'd read them 2 or 3 different ways, whatever they instructed you to do it. So
Must have been a lot of detail. It must have been like months and months of work. I mean, to
it
do
was
that.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
I think
lot.
it was
That's a
3 months, 3 months
yeah.
total. So
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to digest, but it must be interesting in its own way. It must be kind of maybe you're very it's very probably very tight in terms of what like maybe is there room for like adjustment in that or is it very
sure,
tight?
sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's so, um, I mean, the actor would only work 4 hours a day because that's really all you could have an actor do
Mhm.
for these things. But you would have them absolutely. You definitely did. We did different takes. So
Oh, so you
like
do
if
multiple
we
takes.
said rated
And
happy, and we didn't like the way that it came out, we would have them do
do it
another
again.
take.
Hmm.
So there was definitely a little room to play
Or
for the
somewhere to
actor
play. That's
there.
interesting. Like in music, like you how many different versions of a song you do, and then you realize like I didn't hit it better in take two.
Exactly.
It's like, so that's
It's
the one, but you don't know that until you do 10 takes.
right. And you don't know that till sometimes you don't know that until you listen back.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You gotta go back and listen, because
and
that's
the thing is, we would just give the data to Samsung, and they
they're
picked
the
what
ones
they
who
wanted.
picked it, so you
So
didn't get to pick it.
we would just record them.
Yeah, and they
If we
picked
didn't like something, we re-record it, but it would be another take. So then if we ended up with say 5 takes on a line, the Samsung would pick the one that because their
they like
engineers put it together on the other end, in
mhm.
Japan. So we would just record it, send it over there, and then they were the ones that they're the ones that engineered it and got it into the system so that it put all the words together. When someone says, "Hey Bixby, where's this or that?" Like it comes out of the computer.
That's awesome.
They did all that stuff. We didn't have to worry about that end of it.
So you did all that work in the US?
Yes. Yep. In New York.
That's interesting. That's cool. I mean, I actually got to live in Japan in 2004 to
Oh,
2006.
nice.
I lived for 2 years. It was pretty cool, but,
Did you like
yeah,
it?
it's like, my daughter went to a Japanese preschool and kindergarten, so that's her first at school was, like, a
Nice.
Japanese school. In
Yeah, I
fact,
want to go.
she's an artist to this day that has, like, a Shinto style to her work,
Oh, wow.
but,
Wow.
yeah, it was very cool, to be there, among that kinda dichotomy of the Shintoism and then the tech. So we
Nice.
kinda got
Yeah,
both
the tech.
sides. Yeah, it's like you have the Shinto kinda like, uh, spirit animals, they all throughout the whole side of my daughter really got into it, so I got into some of the Japanese lore. Because as a kid, she was like, that's what she's getting some of that because that's her
Gotcha.
kindergarten, preschool, that's what she was getting. In terms of, like, the fantasy stuff, it was, like, based on Japanese fantasy and fairy tales and mythology rather than Western, so that was, kinda
Nice.
cool. That is
Yeah, I
and
definitely
it
want to go one day.
it's
Because
awesome.
I love
Tokyo.
Chinese and Japanese culture. I love it. So
Yeah. Is there something about it? I love the dichotomy of the high tech and then people doing tai chi in these parks that were like these temple kind of parks. They're like really old Japanese culture and kind of saved in the middle of a city in this little serene pastoral era and people are doing Tai Chi and then they go back to their office and they're doing high tech stuff. And
Nice.
there was this kind of dichotomy of people drinking
Yeah,
tea instead of coffee, all different types of teas, and having that tea house rather than a coffee house is like a different like vibe.
sure. Yeah,
So
merge the old and the new, huh? That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah, the old and new is like really was eye opening, and to this day we still have friends there we stay in touch with, and it's just it's just cool having that kind of cross cultural exchange. But yeah, it just seems like when you've done work on all some of your projects, have you done a lot of international work, or is it all kind of more, you did the work with
A
Samsung as well?
little, I do a little international work, not a lot. It's mostly US. I have a project that I'm actually doing an interview with the producer next week for an Israeli documentary.
Oh,
So
cool.
would be one that will be foreign. I did have one in that was based out of France.
Mm,
Um, I can't think of well, of course, Samsung, which is
Samsung, yeah.
Japan, but I can't think of other. I did a couple other ones, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But just a handful. Most of
Yeah.
the stuff is US based.
And you're still like do a lot of attorney work, like it's still like you're wearing all these hats.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean the attorney work is kind of the thread that goes through everything. So whatever I do, I'm doing legal work on it. So if I'm producing, I'm doing the legal side. If I'm just representing filmmakers or voiceover artists, I'm doing the legal side. And then
So
I'm a workers' compensation specialist, so that I do that on a day to day basis and
they,
do some of the other things too. And like trademarking, copywriting,
oh,
LLCs. That's all stuff that's around the entertainment business. So those are things that are done all daily, for the entertainment
yeah. And
world.
that seems like today with the AI, there's a whole debate going on is like, different, like in the EU and here, artists are kind of getting up in arms as like, are you training that machine on my work? And
Yes.
if you train it on my work, am I going to get compensated if I see my work coming out of this machine?
Well, the answer to that is yes. So I'm sure I'm sure AI is trained with your podcast because anything that's out there that the AI reads, and that's how it trains to mimic human behavior and human speech. So what the generative AI is what's being worked on right now, and that's where it combines all that stuff that it pulls
Hmm.
and comes up with something different. So you can't recognize that it's you. But when AI was first starting, in fact, I did the case of one of the voiceover artists, Bev Standing versus TikTok. And Bev Standing was the original voice of TikTok. So like when you go on there and pick a video and you pick the female voice. That was Bev Standing, and
With
she
her
was on
voice.
there without her permission. So
Oh, wow.
so TikTok bought the files, but from there, but she hadn't authorized.
Yeah, authorized it. Yeah, that's kind of like
So
the catch. It kind of reminds me of like in hip hop, like the sampling things that like De
exactly,
La Soul ran into. They didn't clear the samples on a lot of their
exactly,
classic records, and then they got tied up for years. And only in the
exactly,
last like year and a half, it finally cleared. And some of them never got cleared, so they had to re-record.
exactly. Yeah. So
Wow,
that's the thing. So Bev Standing, you knew that it was her voice when you listened. You
you could
listened to
tell.
TikTok, you knew it was her. So that's kind of that's the older generation of AI. The newer generation is generative. So you're not going to know. Like it combines everything that it finds on the internet, and it comes up with something that's different. It doesn't sound familiar to anybody else.
Well, I know
So
a lot of graphic artists have been kind of complaining that they've seen their watermarks being like pulled out, and then it said it was new, but it actually has an artist watermark on it.
right. So that is the current controversy with AI is how could you when you generate something new, it really has to be new. It can't
Yeah,
be
can't
something
be
that
pulling
you
somebody's
recognize
watermark.
from somebody else, right? Because
Like,
then it's infringement at that
yeah,
point.
my daughter, she has a watermark on all her pieces, and she puts stuff in galleries and stuff. And she's in a whole group of like graphic artists, and they've been able to point out like cases where like they've seen their art being
Right.
pulled up. and they're
Right.
like, hey, that's not totally new. You're
Yep. And
pulling up
so
stuff.
the way that the law kind of is dealing with that right now is that the Copyright Office will not copyright any generative AI. So
Mhm.
if there's any portion of a work that's generated by AI, the
You won't
Copyright
do it.
Office will reject it. So you can't protect it. So that's the state of the law right now. So those things that have your daughter's watermark on it would get rejected by the Copyright Office.
Well, that's
So,
cool.
and that, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what's going on to advance AI right now, is to make it so that it is a completely new work, even though it's combined using a whole bunch of existing works and combining them together. So
Yeah, and you're wondering if people are actually given authorization. Like I heard, like I thought Queen actually gave authorization, or Pink Floyd, one of those big bands, gave authorization to kind of reuse their images and voice in the future.
yeah,
Which is
there's
they got paid to do it, but it's like, okay, without that, what are we gonna get this virtual queen?
exactly there's quite a few celebrities that have been doing that. They signed agreements. Like James Earl Jones for Star
Mhm.
Wars. He got paid. He signed over the rights to his voice so that they
So you
can,
can
for
regenerate it
all
for
the
Darth
Star
Vader.
Wars for the future, could use his voice for Darth Vader, and his estate gets paid for that. So
Yeah,
there's a
that
lot
makes
of
sense.
celebrities that are doing that now. So that, again, that's kind of the next wave
The next
in
wave is like,
AI.
hey, if we have an estate, like Prince's estate license his voice, and then somebody makes his new Prince song.
Well, yeah, like the Beatles. Like the Beatles with the new song that they just came out with
Yeah, that was
last
kind
year.
of done that way, right?
That was a tape that John Lennon had done, and AI took the vocal off the tape and then combined
Used
it
it to
to
kind of
music
combine.
that Paul McCartney wrote. So that's how that song was created, through AI. It's crazy.
But a lot of people look at it like kind of like sampling, kind of like the way hip hop and DJs operate. Right? In
Right.
the DJ hip hop world of using samplers and granular samplers, is that you can weave this mosaic of
Correct.
like layered sampled work, and a lot of times like you get some bands where like it was unrecognizable, right? Like they layered so many levels that you can't see where it came from,
Right.
and you still have to clear the sample because they found where it came from.
Right.
No,
Well, the only difference is that the computer does it automatically versus
yeah,
sampling. That would be one of us, a human, would put all those layers together. And AI, the computer does it. Like it's
yeah.
done quickly, like
They
in
prompt,
a split second
yeah,
together.
prompt engineering. Like you might have the human kind of given a prompt of what they want,
Right.
and then, but it's like where the producer, where the kind of talent of artist kind of get into the fight with AI is, are we going to see holographic AI artists kind of creating work, and now that it's going to supplant the human artist that would show up in real life? So is it going to get a generation that would rather see that holographic AI, or would they rather see a real person, like a Miles Davis level artist or a
Well,
Coltrane level artist, or would they rather see this kind of contrived
so the thing is, in 10 years from now, you're not going to know the difference. That's
Mhm.
the thing. So it's going to be, when you see an AI person on screen, you're not going to know that person's not an actual human. Like that's the thing. So that's the scary part, and that's the thing that actors are scared about and voiceover artists are scared about, is that AI will be able to replace the human image and the human voice, and you won't be able to tell. Like that's the scary part. You won't be able to tell the difference. So
Yeah, that's where I've run into like philosophical arguments with certain people. Is like we could get to that level where maybe you can't tell because on its surface it looks like it's a real person. But if you go see somebody do a live play in New York, and you have an actor that has like that talent of actually doing that live acting, right? There's something about the human spark of creativity that is not capable of being captured by the machine.
not yet.
Yeah, I
Not
still think there's
not
a
yet.
certain level of it that it can't be captured, because at the end of the day, the computer captures what was already done.
Right. So that's
Like,
how it learns.
Yeah, it
So
learns to
it'll look
actually
at that
generate.
act
Yeah, it
and
could
it will.
randomly generate something in the frame, but not maybe exactly something brand new.
Not yet. Not yet. That's what I'm saying. Like in the future, that's what the computer training, machine learning is all about. It's to get to that level. It's not here yet, but
Yeah, I think it's a spark
that's
of
what it's
that
all about.
algorithm
So,
is a lot more complicated than people think, 'cause that spark of creativity that human beings have is not fully algorithmic, you
right.
know, formulaic. There's something about the random nature of human beings' art is kind of based on feelings, and the computer doesn't have a feeling. It can
Mm,
approximate what it thinks a feeling is, but it doesn't really have a feeling.
well, I mean, you're right, but that they're trying to the generative AI is trying to replicate that. Like,
Yeah, it's trying to.
so,
I'm into computers. I'm a computer guy, right? So I'm
oh,
just
there you
saying,
go. Yeah. So it's
from my point of view, yeah, is that the sentience of a human being is not in the algorithm yet.
right.
Maybe it could be.
Correct.
You
I
can
agree
have
with you.
something like the data, but
It's not
my understanding,
yet.
yeah, it's
Not yet.
not.
But you know that like that's
They're
what
trying to
NVIDIA's
get to
working on.
that.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
you're trying to get to that. You're trying to get to be sentient. Because
Right.
if you have pure sentience where it actually feels it's an individual and it actually does have feelings and it does have moods, if you get to the point where the technology can actually do that and it's not just mirroring what it thinks a mood is, but it actually has a mood, then you actually have created like a data kind of Gene Roddenberry concept, right? You
Right.
actually have done it. If you get to that, I don't know if that's actually going to happen in our lifetime. I mean, we are going to have things that look like they're that, but they actually aren't that.
Yeah,
That
I think I agree with you. It's gonna get close, I think, but I don't think it'll ever get there yet. But it could in the future. You know, it
Yeah,
could.
we have
You know,
we have exponential growth, right? There's exponential growth in tech. If
right.
somebody comes up with a technology that can mirror the human brain, but the human brain is still the most complicated computer that was ever created, and we don't even understand our own brains.
Right.
So if we
Agreed.
don't even understand like 90% of what our brain can do,
But if we don't understand it, I'm sure the computer could figure can figure it out. Right. That's the
well,
scary part.
computers get overblown. At the end of the day, they just know zeros and ones
Right.
and off
Bunch of
and on.
digits.
And
Yeah.
off and on is not as delicate as what's going on in our brain.
Yeah.
There's actually more than off and on going on.
Yeah.
So
True. True.
that's the argument I would make. But yeah, I mean, people can get scared, but I still think the human being, we got an edge. It's biological. It's a
Oh, sure.
biological.
Sure. I mean, right now, absolutely. There's nothing to worry about until at the second. But
Yeah,
the
it's a reason
science
for
and
people
the
to fight.
research is
Yeah.
it's pretty scary. So
But at the point, like if it becomes sentient, then it's like, but then you got to give it rights. That's a
right.
whole nother argument.
So and that's why actually one of the proposals for laws that I've seen is um, the, to put a disclaimer on the screen if you're watching something that's generated by AI. Is
Mhm.
that you need to put a disclaimer up saying that this is generated by AI and it's not human, right? So then
Yeah.
you give people a choice on whether they, there people obviously they want, like you said, to go see a play live so that they can choose that they don't want to see AI generated things. They want
Yeah.
human art to watch it.
But
So
the human art, yeah, I think that's the big rub is I think when people have so far, looked at things that are like I go back and make an argument. If I go back and look at like something like Fantasia or the original Snow White drawn by cartoonists, and I can look at what they've done with the new stuff,
mhm.
I would argue that I'd rather look at Fantasia and Snow White because
Yeah, I
there's
agree.
something about the human art that you can make something that looks amazing, but it doesn't look as amazing as that.
I agree. I like the older stuff better too. But so that's us, and that's because we've been around the block a couple times. What about the new generation? Like
Well, they even
that's how I look at
Japanese.
it.
There was a famous Japanese animator. The animators that created like Spirited Away. Like he argued that he looked at what AI was doing, and in terms of he thought it was like just an abomination because he's a graphic cartoonist at heart, right? And he said that he looked at what it could do, and he said it cannot convey the emotion of what he's doing in his work.
I agree. It's too perfect, actually,
Yeah,
in a
and
way.
that's what the
Too
problem is.
perfect.
The perfect nature of it is people who aren't artists maybe don't understand that, but part of what art is the imperfection of it.
Yeah, exactly. The imperfections is what makes it. That's what
And
makes it charming.
the
That's
computer
what makes it
spends too much time trying to make it perfect, and it loses the point.
the charm. Yeah,
The point is not that.
agreed. Yeah, it's kind of just like using Chat GPT to write papers.
Yeah.
Same kind
Well,
of
yeah,
thing.
professors sometimes I've been able to kind of figure it out. The kids think that professors don't know. A lot of professors I've talked to, like I went to Bowdoin, I knew guys at Harvard and Brown, and they're like, "Yeah, I can tell. I
Yeah,
know when it's coming to me. I can see. I feel. I know it."
yeah,
So
of course they can. I mean, especially if there's a student that came up with a brilliant paper one time, and it's not what they normally do.
yeah,
So
what they normally do is when I talk to him, he can't convey what's in his paper.
right,
So we
right,
do the oral exam on this kid, and he can't match what he wrote.
right, exactly. And ChatGPT is not always correct either.
Boy,
So
that's where we have to check it. And we use it in my tech, we use it, but we have to trust and verify
right,
because like it will give you like an hallucination. Everybody knows what if you know what the tech is. It will try to give you the answer. That's the thing with AI. And it'll give you a better answer than Google search ever did.
right,
But you have to check it because it will go. There's a technical term called hallucinations. It will actually take things and give you an answer and it's totally factually incorrect.
right. Because it finds something out there and pulls it back that it thinks it's fact and it's not. So, I mean, I've heard about lawyers that gotten
Burned by
in
that.
trouble from reprimanded from by the bar for not checking. They put completely wrong citations to cases they got off Chat GPT and
Well,
handed
that's
them
why
to the
you got your
judge.
license, right? The reason
And
you
the
have your
judge is like,
license.
"Where is this case? I haven't found this case." And then they fess up that it was Chat GPT, and then they get they get in trouble. They
Dinged,
get reprimanded.
dinged.
So
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of like reason why you're a surgeon. Reason why you're a lawyer. Reason why you're like an engineer is like you need to kind of can calc and verify that formula, that tolerance,
right,
because that's what we're paying you to do.
it's the human judgment. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's 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 what makes me different than Chat GPT is
yeah.
my judgment.
I think it's a tool. I always like people didn't like synthesizers. There are people, and I'm a synthesis. Like people thought synthesizers were garbage, right? The
Yeah,
musicians out of Berkeley and like out of the big you know, uh canons of training musicians. They were like, no, that's not a Stradivarius, that's not a Steinway, that's not a German piano, that's not a real instrument.
right,
But at some point people realize it's like, hey, a Moog, mini Moog is an instrument that can be considered to be valuable within music. So like you can look at it like that. Back in the 60s and 50s, people were arguing that's not music. And it's like you can find artists that will use this and actually create really great art.
right. Yeah, it's kind of like the drum machine.
Yeah.
Right? You can use a drum machine in the studio all you want, but when you go on tour, you want to see the drummer. You don't want to hear a damn
Yeah.
machine.
You want a drummer. Yeah. Like maybe Prince, when he went on tour, did he have that 808 or the Lynn drum doing it? He had a human being doing it.
Right.
You know, he,
Not in the studio though when he
in the
recorded it,
studio, he was using the Lyn, he's
because who
using the 808.
cares? No one sees
Yeah.
it. But
Or
at
sometimes he was on
at
the
his
keyboard.
concert, you better have someone. You better have someone live drumming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. But I think it's interesting. We've kind of segged into all kind, but we're talking about your legal aspect, and I wanted to jump into that a
Mhm.
little bit. I think it's just interesting with the world we live in is it's like everything's not black and white. There's a lot of grays, and that's why we
Correct.
have attorneys, right? Because you guys can fight it out for everybody.
The law is definitely gray. Everyone thinks that law is black and white. That this is this. No, there's
Well,
always another side,
it's a
no
work in
matter what it
progress.
is.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a work in
exactly.
progress. So you're actually building like the case law to actually say what it is. Cause like whatever we did in the 1700s, well, we're in the 21st century. So now we got to deal with new things, right?
Right.
So then you think you got to evolve the law to match the modern world, right?
Yep. That's always evolving. That's the reason why case law and precedent is so great, because it changes with the times. So
Yeah.
as times change, cases change, and then the law changes. So that's the reason why our systems is probably the greatest in the world. I would say.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense because, like, we didn't have airplanes. We didn't have rocket ships. We certainly did not have the AI in the robotics that we have today. So we have some territory that they wouldn't have thought about.
Right.
And so we've got to we can't just say, well, it's not in the Constitution. Well, robots aren't in the Constitution.
Well, even people's the way they're attitudes have changed. People's attitudes change, politics changes. All those changes get reflected in how judges make decisions. And then once the judge makes a decision, that sets a precedent, and then that's now becomes the law. So
yeah,
it really does change with the times. So
and
unless there's
yeah,
unless there's a reason for it not to, like if it's the same way for 300 years, there's no reason to change it now. Then it's going to stay the same. But if there's a reason to change it, then that gets reflected in judges' opinions.
well, it's the whole thing with the copyright and the patents is like there's a lot of stuff they always like, well, it was on paper, but now there's stuff like in the software, in the ether, right? So you have this stuff in the ether. And what I've always argued, like the tech bros, like us tech bros, people like tech people, we can go beyond the law because we can make a machine that can do something that the law didn't understand or doesn't comprehend. So we can go beyond, and we could actually, and sometimes we've been accused of, and we go and do stuff and we don't think about the consequences of what we create. Like
and the law has to catch up, which is
like an Oppenheimer type of thing. Like you go and build that thing and then you go, oh, I didn't know you could use it like that.
Right. Yep. And that, kind of like AI, the law is trying to catch up with the technology. So that happens a lot. So
yeah, you build something that goes beyond, like this is going beyond the borders, beyond the confines of what you have in a book. It can do something that like you couldn't do that before, but this can do it like every 5 seconds, every millisecond. It could be breaking a law, and then what are you going to do about it?
Right, the law has to catch up and change. That's what happens. That's how it evolves. So, and that's where the case law comes in, because it could be there's a lawsuit that's usually brought over something like that, and then a judge makes a decision, and that becomes the law of the land. Yeah. If it gets to to the highest courts, and they agree with the lower courts, then that becomes law of the land. It becomes a precedent, like you said.
Like clearing the sample, like the idea, like the sampler was created and nobody thought about like consequences of copyright law.
Right.
So built these devices that could just sample.
And, that's a perfect example of it. Perfect example.
And people just went buck wild until somebody say, wait a minute, you're taking copyrighted material and you're not paying the owner of the copyright. Right.
So there was a lawsuit, and then the courts came in, and then the copyright law changed and said, you can't sample without paying the compulsory license. So, they get the original artist gets paid, all that stuff happened because it evolved.
And now it's like digital.
All the technology.
And then you go on YouTube and you play something like longer than like 30 seconds and you'll get like a copyright strike, or notice that you're like, oh, this isn't yours.
Right.
So it's like, so the copyright laws, at least in music and some like media, has been digitized to some degree.
Yep. Nope. The copyright law definitely has kept up with the technology. I think it does a good job at keeping up with the technology. So
do you think it would be a mirror of that with AI, something like what the digital rights management things do, that somehow that's got to get applied to AI in some way, but AI can do it so fast that's been the kind of argument that the digital rights management can't keep up with what AI could actually do.
That's correct. Yeah. Like I said, the problem now, like I think it's kind of caught up with the old, 10 years ago AI, where, you can't take someone's voice and sample it and use it. I think that's kind of, the law says universally, no, you can't do that.
Can't do that.
But, but now, like I said, the generative, like what do we do when it's combined and it's a whole bunch of voices and we don't know, it's 20 different people's voices together to start a new voice, or 20 different paintings put together.
Yeah.
To make
it ends up being kind of like the sample thing where like De La Soul got hit with all the layers they had done and they couldn't clear the album because the tech got to a point where it could identify everything that was being used. And say, oh, now we actually can identify all these samples and we know what they are. So now you got to pay all these people.
Yeah. So with AI, we'd have to be able to have some kind of electronic, some code, some digital code that gets put on every single piece of work so that you'd be able to trace it
Little
back.
tracer. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I was telling my artist, is like telling my daughter that the graphic artists or the illustrators, painters need to kind of think about the way digital rights management was done with music and apply
Right.
it to art. And they probably haven't. I don't know if they've really thought that way or anybody's created a standard. I have never heard of
I
one
think they're working on it from what I understand, but it's not. No, there's nothing out there that
that does that.
you can digital fingerprint and a piece of a piece of a voiceover gig or a painting or a book or
Mhm.
whatever. So I don't think that exists.
That's interesting. So we're in the brave new world. It's a lot of cool stuff going on, but the challenges. But I think like where everybody can kind of ramp up to it. There's a lot of opportunity in your field
Absolutely,
to
absolutely.
to look at things that people like. To me, is like you look at the tool, you figure it out, you learn it. Fear is like holds people back. But like in tech, we have to learn all the time. It's like it's exponentially what we have to learn because what we learned 6 months ago, sometimes it won't even apply anymore. If we
Yeah,
got to learn something totally new, it's like if we have if wheel gets reinvented constantly,
right.
and so
Well, I think AI is going to open up more opportunities for producers and actors because it's going to be digitally. Have digital tools that you'll be able
yeah.
to rely on. So
Well, you'll be able to make movies at a level that they only like a Spielberg could do, and you could do it with like a powerful computer,
right,
be
right,
able to generate. And so you get an independent filmmaker, like, I can see this, I have this in my head, and now I can actually make it happen. So imagine an
right,
Orson Welles with the ability to actually do that by himself to a degree with the help of the computers. Like, what could you get? You
exactly.
could get
Instead of
really
having
great.
to get a camera, you could going out and shooting it and doing all
Yeah.
the pieces. You just do it on your computer. So that I
Yeah.
mean,
So if you
it's
have
definitely
somebody that
gonna
has that vision, you could have an opportunity where actually human driven, you could get really great work.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's another tool that's coming down the road. So I think it's the creative is gonna it's gonna help out the creative. I
Yeah, I
believe.
think it's gonna allow your vision to actually happen. Where
Sure,
before, like, you might not have been able to do it because you couldn't get the backing,
it'll
and
be
now you
another
can
piece of
actually.
canvas and with the the brushes, right? To be
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
new canvas to work on.
yeah. I think that's how I look at it, is an opportunity to just, just paint out there and put all my sound paintings in the world, and people just interpret it. But, I wanna thank you for being on the show.
Thank
I
you.
do have another show coming right up, but, I would like to talk longer, but today I scheduled too many
It's all right.
back-to-back shows.
No
So,
worries.
thank you for being on the Family Liquor Coach podcast. We do have your link below. That will be fully clickable to go to your website, and people can connect with you there and check out the work you have there. Do you have a way people to contact you there?
Absolutely. Yes, I have all my contact info's there, my email, my phone number, my office, everything's there.
Okay, great. So we do encourage you to click that. We've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will be on all the other channels you can watch or listen to a podcast like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Substack. So I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.